In considering the Palestine-Israel claims, two jolting factors surround this deliberately confusing land claim. These are the shockingly small size of the disputed land compared to the whole earth, and two, the man who was the architect and major driving force to reclaim this land, Theodor Herzl, was a non-atheist, but he was fighting for a religious cause, a religious promised land. Welcome to Marifado, to our Hamiti Hebrew Ethics channel. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. In considering the Palestine-Israel claims, the promised land according to God's decree, we will look at the following thoughts: false religious base, historical timeline, manipulated international community that granted Israel political sovereignty, other claimants, and also a summary. We know that based on our studies, this is a baseless promise because the land already was occupied by melanin-dominant human beings. We also know that the God who promised that land is not the creator of the whole universe, but is a tribal deity who is known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the elders of Israel actually saw this God sitting in his chariot on top of a mountain, and they can describe him. He has feet, he has hands, he is like a human being, and is a male. So we do not want to waste time on this religious basis and argument, but only say if you want to understand and also get information about the original inhabitants in the land, so-called land of Canaan, the land of Israel, you have to watch our video, Canaanite for Real. Let's look at the historical timeline, which we are given on the website www.balanta.org, basing on the writings and research and the teachings of Sheikh Anta Diop, also in his book, The African Origin of Civilization, a Myth or Reality. He gives the chronological table of the rise of man. They call it evolution of man, but evidence there is that the Semites, when you call somebody Semite, they were not here on earth, nor their history. So melanin-dominant human beings, we have been here on earth for over 70,000 years ago, because our religious activities are demonstrated by archaeology and by what was left by our ancestors. This is 70,000-year-old serpent, a worship site which is based in Tsodilo Hills in Botswana, Southern Africa, and it features a giant stone python. It is the oldest ritual worship site to have been discovered thus far. You can go to this website, you can also go to this YouTube and watch it. This is the historical timeline we are giving of the issue of Israel, their claim to the land that does not also belong to the current Palestinians. So we found people that are older than Israel, and these people are the people whose land has been taken and usurped by this God and this deity. The San, so-called Bushmen, the Basarwa, the Kung, the Hwe, are indigenous people of Southern Africa, which spans most areas of South Africa, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Mozambique, Swaziland, Botswana, Namibia, and Angola. They were traditionally hunter-gatherers, and they are still animistic. Genetic evidence suggests they are one of the oldest, if not the oldest, peoples in the world. A genetic source called Adam, according to Spencer Wells, from which all humans can ultimately trace their genetic heritage. So the owners of Israel have been identified there. Let us look at the manipulation that the elders and leaders of Israel did to come up with the idea of having their land in Canaan. Because most of the Jews who were in Palestine pre-1917 had come there during the earlier colonization of Hamit by Alexander the Greek. He's not the great for some of us, other than those that came because of their religious zealotry, because they believed too heavily in the Torah. So you can see already here the history that is given, that pre-British mandate of Palestine and the division there, these blue ones are the areas that were allotted to these Jews that we are discussing. The ones that were there prior to the mass exodus that we have seen in the last century. So the Palestine Israel claims are based on the issues that arose from the Holocaust 1933, 1945, and the agitation that had already started to occur. We will see some signs here that the League of Nations failed to settle certain issues because of the agitation of a number of people. Prior to the British manipulation, there was a Zionist movement. The Zionists, one of the leaders was Theodor Herzl, whom we have already identified that he was an atheist and would use any measures possible to get the land of Canaan in Africa allotted to the Jews. So he writes here that a lot of things in his book, these books that he wrote, the complete diaries of Theodor Herzl, where he says it would be an excellent idea to call in respectable accredited anti-Semites as liquidators of property. So he's dealing with the rich Jews that were not in favor of the Jewish question. And then he goes on to say, we shall solve the Jewish question by either safeguarding or liquidating the fortune of the wealthy Jews. If we cannot do it with the help of the wealthy Jews, we shall do it in spite of them. So because of that, we find that the wealthy Jews came in, and we shall show you one of the wealthy Jews that chipped in. Here is what the father of Zionism, who gave birth to the current state of Israel, said in his diaries. It is essential that the sufferings of Jews become worse. This will assist in the realization of our plans. I have an excellent plan. I shall induce anti-Semites to liquidate Jewish wealth. The anti-Semites will assist us thereby in that they will strengthen the persecution and oppression of Jews. The anti-Semites shall be our best friends. So when this occurred, and when the debacle of 1933-45 occurred, prior to that they had been offered Uganda as part of the country where they can go and settle, but they refused the Uganda solution and moved on because stymied by prior Ottoman reluctance to allow a large-scale Jewish settlement in the areas known as Palestine then and Israel today. The Balfour Declaration by a Secretary of Foreign Affairs in the British government, Balfour, was issued. This is the Balfour Declaration. It was written in the Foreign Office, November 2nd, 1917, to the wealthy Jew, Lord Rothschild, who was not and is not indigenous to the place they were claiming, because they all came from Khazaria. Most of them anyway. So the Balfour Declaration says, I have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionists' aspirations, which has been admitted to and approved by the cabinet, British cabinet. So that is the British sleight of hand. And he goes on to give the promise there. So the genes of people that migrated after the Balfour Declaration and the Declaration of the State of Israel, 1948, is known that they did not originate in the so-called Middle East. Here's an abstract from PubMed.ncbi. The question of Jewish ancestry has been the subject of controversy for 2 centuries and has yet to be resolved. The Rhineland hypothesis depicts Eastern European Jews as a population isolate that emerged from a small group of German Jews who migrated eastward and expanded rapidly. Alternatively, the Khazarian hypothesis suggested that Eastern European Jews descended from the Khazars, an amalgam of Turkic clans that settled the Caucasus in the early centuries and converted to Judaism in the 8th century. So those are the people that we saw in the video, Canaanite for Real, that came downwards. So they were continuously added to and reinforced by Judaized Romans and the Greeks. Following the collapse of the Khazar Empire, they fled to Eastern Europe. And the rise of European Jews is therefore explained by the contribution of the Judeo-Khazars. Thus far, however, the Khaza's contribution has been estimated only empirically, as the absence of genome-wide data from Caucasus populations precluded testing the Khazarian hypothesis. Master that and mind that very well. Recently, sequencing of the modern Caucasus populations prompted us to revisit, these are the scholars, the Khazarian hypothesis and compare it with the Rhineland hypothesis. Then they say we applied a wide range of population genetic analysis to compare these two hypotheses. So what did they find? Our findings support the Khazarian hypothesis and portray the European Jewish genome as a mosaic of Near Eastern Caucasus from Central Asia. European and Semitic ancestry, thereby consolidating previously contradictory reports of Jewish ancestry. We further describe a major difference among Caucasus populations explained by the early presence of Judeans in the southern and central Caucasus. Our results have important implications for the demographic forces that shaped the genetic diversity in the Caucasus and also for medical studies. So read these two books to find out more. The Khazars, 13th tribe, and also the other one by Arthur Koestler. Very, very interesting. Let's look for other claimants to the land of Israel. These are like Sanders Crowdy, who is the father and one of the founders of the Hebrew Israelite movement, who was a Freemason, a grandmaster of Freemasons, claims the same, that they are from Judea, they are from Israel. Their claim is in error because it is based on the Torah, which was a book crafted and written by the Khazarian rabbi. And also he claims Ben Ami, the late, and them, and also the Jews, the daring rescue of the Ethiopian Jews. So if you read from the Balanta website and you find information that the existence of groups in America, therefore describing themselves as black Jews, can be traced to the latter part of the 19th century. Prior to that, nothing. They were not there. So they are just like Christians and they are just like Muslim converts. They are not the indigenous or original as long as they claim it using these books. So the Palestine-Israel claims is a claim of melanin-dominant Bantu African territory and inheritance. It can not be done via the Torah. If you want that claim, just like what I am doing, you have to claim it from a cultural and religious perspective, not European or Jewish or Islamic or Christian or anything. All others base their entitlement and right to the promised land based on man-made history. The idea that a divinity gave them this land is a fallacious belief and sentimentality. The Jewish leaders who agitated for the establishment of the state of Israel used a religious base they did not even believe. They used their wealth and they built a heritage for their own. This is what melanin-dominant human beings must learn. We at least have an older, more legitimate claim and a reliable divinity. So the question would be, why would they claim to be from Palestine, Canaan, or Africa when they are from Central Asia and Turkey? They are being used by a non-human force that sustains its power by using world rulers and leaders and elites who are then used to manipulate and continue the occupation and the ownership of all melanin-dominant countries and eventually the planet Earth. There is a force, a non-human force that has come to take over the Earth. And it is doing that step by step. It cannot do it straightforward because the sun disturbs it. So they are claiming our heroes, our historical and sacred sites, and continue to indoctrinate melanin-dominant human beings to become Catholics, to become Christians, to become Muslims, to become Hebrew Israelites, and ditch their culture and their heritage that connects them to the earth so that they take over. That's what we learn. We have to join our heart and our mind to re-establish our own ideology and practice our own history and they know our heritage, not to fight for these forces, not to support these forces that are against us. Again, in conclusion, therefore, we learn that despite false-based claims and the false claims of inheritance and origin and history, the Jews were welded and bonded together into a nation by an ideology that has now given them extra force and connection to some divinities, and they are now a force to be reckoned with in the world in terms of politics, money, education, invention, and manipulation, because these people came late on the scene. It is time for us to know that there is no Middle East, there is no Israel, there is no Palestine, there is no Mozambique, there is no Zimbabwe, there is no Malawi, there is no Hawaii, there is no the Caribbean, nothing there. It's all our earth. It's melanin dominant earth. It's all ours. We cannot claim portions. So, thank you for watching. Subscribe to our channel, Hamiti Hebrew Ethics, for ancestral spiritual congruence. Till we meet again. If you want to have any questions answered, send us an email on join@marifado.com. Your Hamanager Topi, Priest Rabbi LM Trizulu, Kunikeni Mjaganja, saying Ameni.